The first thing I remember after the accident was the smell. Hospitals all smell the same. Bleach, plastic, and something faintly sweet that never quite leaves your nose. It sticks there like a bad memory. I woke up staring at the ceiling tiles. White squares. A small crack above the fluorescent light. For a moment, I thought I was in my own bedroom. Then my ribs reminded me I wasn't. A sharp pain shot through my chest when I tried to breathe too deeply. My left leg was wrapped in something heavy. My right arm had an 4-line tape to it. Someone had written Martin Room 312 on a small whiteboard near the door. Martin, that's me. 71 years old. Retired civil engineer. Widower. And apparently, the proud owner of a fractured rib, a bruised lung, and a broken leg. The accident itself was stupid. The kind of stupid thing that happens when you assume the world will behave the way it always has. It was Tuesday morning.
8:40 a.m.
I was driving my 2014 Ford Explorer to the grocery store. Light rain. Not even heavy. A pickup truck ran the red light on Jefferson and Pine. I remember the horn. Then the sound of metal folding like paper. After that, blank. The doctor later told me I was lucky. Mr. Whitaker, he said, adjusting his glasses. At your age, this could have been much worse. I nodded. Doctors always say that. It usually means something was worse, just not the worst possible version. He left around noon. My son Daniel arrived around 1. Daniel is 42, tall, thin, always looks slightly rushed, like the world is a train and he's worried about missing it. He stood at the foot of my bed, hands in his jacket pockets. Jesus, Dad, he said quietly. You scared us. Truck scared me first, I said. He smiled politely, the kind of smile people make when they're not sure if they should laugh. Behind him stood his wife, Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, 40, always dressed like she's about to walk into a yoga commercial. Today she wore a beige coat and held her phone like it might explode if she set it down. She barely looked at me. I noticed that. Little things become very noticeable when you're lying in a hospital bed. Daniel cleared his throat. So, the doctors say you'll need some help for a while. Looks that way. Rebecca finally spoke. Well, obviously, she said. Her voice had that tight, irritated edge people get when life interrupts their schedule. She glanced at her phone again. I assumed she was checking messages. I closed my eyes for a moment. The medication made everything slightly slow and foggy. Then I heard her whisper, or what she probably thought was a whisper. Daniel, we need to talk outside. They stepped into the hallway. But hospital doors are thin. And old men, especially engineers, tend to notice details, including voices through walls. Rebecca's voice came first. Sharp, impatient. We cannot take care of him. Daniel said something quieter. I couldn't hear the words. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. We can't take care of Dad. Our weekend at the spa comes first. She didn't even lower her voice. The words bounced off the hallway walls and slid right through the door. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Pain medication can do that. But then she kept talking. You know how hard it was to book that place, she said. 3 months waiting list. Daniel murmured something, probably trying to calm her down. Rebecca sighed dramatically. Look, he can hire someone. He has money. It's not like he's broke. That part made me smile, because she was absolutely right. I do have money. Not billionaire money, but comfortable. Very comfortable. After 40 years in civil engineering, and selling my firm in 2015, things worked out well. I leaned my head back against the pillow, and I smiled. Not a sad smile. Not an angry one. Just thoughtful. Because there was one small detail Rebecca seemed to have forgotten. For the past 3 years, I had been sending Daniel and Rebecca $10,000 every month. $120,000 a year. Family support, Daniel called it. It started after their second child was born. Daycare costs, mortgage, temporary help. Temporary became permanent. I never complained. I had the money, and they were my son's family. But lying there in that hospital bed, listening to my daughter-in-law argue that a spa weekend was more important than helping the old man who quietly funded their lifestyle. Something shifted. Not dramatically, just a small click inside my head, like a gear moving into place. They came back into the room 2 minutes later. Rebecca looked suddenly cheerful. Daniel pulled a chair closer to my bed. "So, Dad," he said gently, "we've been thinking about your recovery." "Oh." Rebecca nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, we think the best solution is professional care." "Professional care," I repeated. "Yes," she said quickly. "A nurse. Someone trained. It's really the safest option." I studied her face. Perfect makeup. Concern carefully arranged like furniture in a showroom. Daniel added, "We'd still visit, of course." "Of course." I nodded slowly. "That sounds reasonable." Relief flashed across Rebecca's face so fast it almost made me laugh. They stayed another 10 minutes. Talked about insurance, traffic, the kids' soccer practice, normal things. Then Rebecca glanced at her phone again. "We should go," she said. "The sitter leaves at 4. Daniel squeezed my shoulder. "Call us if you need anything, Dad." Need anything. That phrase echoed in the quiet room after they left. I stared at the ceiling tiles again. Same crack above the fluorescent light. I reached for the small table beside the bed and picked up my phone. 3 missed calls from the insurance company. 1 text from my neighbor Harold. And a reminder notification from my bank. Monthly transfer scheduled. $10,000 Whitaker Family Support. Scheduled for tomorrow morning. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I chuckled softly. It hurt my ribs a little. Worth it. A nurse walked in around 4:30 p.m. Young woman. Kind eyes. Pain level, Mr. Whitaker? Manageable. She adjusted the 4 and checked the monitor. "Do you have family helping you when you leave here?" I nodded slowly. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll hire a nurse." "That's a good idea." "Yes," I said. "A very good idea." She left. The room became quiet again. Outside, evening rain tapped softly against the window. I opened my banking app. The $10,000 transfer blinked on the screen. Scheduled. Automatic. Routine. I pressed cancel transfer. The confirmation box appeared. "Are you sure you want to stop this recurring payment?" I smiled again. "Yes," I whispered. "Very sure." I pressed confirm. Then I placed the phone back on the table. Closed my eyes. And for the first time that day, I slept peacefully. 3 hours later, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the table. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I reached for it slowly. The screen lit up. 10 missed calls. All from Daniel. And 1 text message from Rebecca. It said, "Martin, I think there's been some kind of mistake with the bank transfer." I sniffed softly. A small, amused sound. Hospitals smell funny. But sometimes, karma smells even better. The phone kept vibrating. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I let it ring. At my age, you learn something important about urgency. Most things that feel urgent really aren't. Especially money problems that belong to someone else. I finally picked up the phone and opened the message thread. Rebecca had sent 2 more texts. "Martin, please call us." 2 minutes later, "The bank says the transfer didn't go through." I stared at the screen. The rain outside the hospital window had stopped. The sky was turning that dull gray blue that happens just before sunset. My room was quiet except for the slow beep of the heart monitor. I typed back 1 short message. "No mistake." Then I set the phone down. It buzzed again almost instantly. Daniel calling. I answered this time. "Dad." His voice sounded tight. "Yes." "Did you cancel the transfer?" "Yes." Silence. You could almost hear the gears in his head trying to catch up. "Why?" I sniffed softly. My nose was still slightly stuffed from the hospital air. "Because," I said calmly, "I figured you 2 might need the money for the spa." He didn't respond immediately. Then he sighed. "Dad, Rebecca didn't mean." "Daniel," I said gently, "you know hospital doors are thin." That stopped him. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally he muttered, "She was stressed." Of course she was. I could practically see him rubbing his forehead. Look, Dad. On what? On whether I'm still part of the family, or just the monthly ATM. He didn't answer that. After a moment he said, Rebecca wants to talk. I'm a little tired tonight. That's it. That's it. I hung up. The phone stayed quiet for about 10 minutes. Then Rebecca called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message came 30 seconds later. Martin, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Daniel said you overheard something earlier. I didn't mean it like that. Obviously we care about you. I listened to the message twice. Her voice had changed. Soft, concerned, professional. It reminded me of something from my engineering days. Concrete cracks slowly, but when pressure hits the right point, the structure shifts. The nurse came in around 7. She brought dinner, hospital chicken, rice, something green pretending to be vegetables. Any family visiting tonight? She asked. Not tonight. She nodded. You'll need help at home for a few weeks. Maybe longer. I'm working on that. Well, she said, adjusting the tray. A good nurse makes a big difference. I believed her. After she left, I opened my phone again. This time I didn't look at messages. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to a name I hadn't called in a while. Carl Henderson. Carl used to be my lawyer. Technically, he still was. He helped me sell my engineering firm 11 years ago.
Shopman.
Late 60s. Liked bourbon and chess. I pressed call. He answered on the third ring. Well, he said, this must be serious. Why? You only call when something expensive is happening. I chuckled. That sounds about right. He listened quietly while I explained the situation. The accident, the hospital, the spa comment, the $10,000 payments. Carl didn't interrupt. When I finished, he whistled softly. 10 grand a month? 3 years. Martin. That's $360,000.
I'm aware.
Were these loans?
No.
Agreements?
No.
He sighed. Family generosity. Exactly. Carl was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question I expected. What do you want to do? I stared at the dark hospital window. My reflection looked older than I felt. Nothing illegal, I said. That's a good start. But I do want clarity. Carl chuckled. That's a very polite word for revenge. Not revenge. What then? Perspective. He laughed. Same thing, different packaging. I told him about the canceled transfer. He approved. Smart first move, he said. But money habits are like gravity. When they suddenly stop, people panic. I noticed. Good. Panic reveals priorities. Carl paused. Do they know about the trust? I smiled slowly.
No.
Well, he said. That's interesting. Very interesting. 10 years ago, after my wife Ellen passed away, Carl helped me restructure my estate. Most of my assets were placed into a revocable living trust. Standard planning for someone with a few $1,000,000 and 2 grandchildren. Daniel knew he would inherit something eventually, but he didn't know the details, and he definitely didn't know the conditions. Carl's voice came back through the phone. If family support stops suddenly, he said, people sometimes start asking questions. That's fine. Do you want them to know about the trust now?
No.
Good. Why? Because patience, Carl said, is the most profitable investment. I laughed. That sounds like legal philosophy. It's just experience. He cleared his throat. First step, focus on your recovery. Already doing that. Second step, hire professional care like you said. Tomorrow. Third step. What? Observe. Observe. Yes. Carl's voice dropped slightly. When money disappears, you learn who actually cares. I looked at the quiet hospital room, the empty chair where Daniel had sat earlier, the untouched vegetables on my tray. Carl, yeah, I think I already know. He chuckled. You'd be surprised. We talked another 15 minutes. Mostly logistics, nurses, rehab timelines, legal paperwork. Before hanging up, he said something that stayed with me. Martin, the best revenge isn't punishment. What is it? Letting people reveal themselves, and then adjusting your life accordingly. I liked that. Around 9 that night, the nurse returned to check my vitals. Your phone's been busy, she said. Family. She smiled sympathetically. That's usually when phones ring the most. After she left, I checked my messages again. 6 new texts from Rebecca. 3 from Daniel. 1 from an unknown number. I opened that one first. Hi, Mr. Whitaker. This is Emily from Bright Care Nursing. Your friend Carl said you might need home care services. I smiled. Carl worked fast. I typed back, yes, let's talk tomorrow. Then I scrolled up to Daniel's messages. The last one read, Dad, we can come stay with you if needed. I sniffed again. That amused little sound. It hurt my ribs slightly. Worth it. Funny how solutions appear once money disappears. I turned off the phone and closed my eyes. But sleep didn't come right away. Instead, memories did. Daniel as a kid, 10 years old, building a treehouse in our backyard. He hammered every nail crooked. But he tried. Ellen had laughed watching him. He'll figure it out eventually, she said. I wondered when exactly things had changed. Maybe they hadn't. Maybe money simply hides things until it stops flowing. Around midnight, my phone buzzed one more time. I opened it reluctantly. A new message from Rebecca. Just one sentence. Martin, please don't punish the kids for something I said. I stared at that line for a long moment. Then I set the phone back down. Because the interesting part of the story hadn't even started yet. And somewhere out there, Daniel and Rebecca were probably staring at their bank account, wondering why gravity had suddenly stopped working. I sniffed quietly in the dark. Funny thing about money, when it disappears, truth usually shows up. The next morning started quietly. Too quietly. Hospitals are strange like that. The world outside keeps moving. Cars, coffee shops, school buses. But inside the building time moves in slow, padded steps. I woke up at 6:12 a.m. I know the exact time because the red numbers on the wall clock were the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. 6:12. My leg throbbed a little. My ribs felt like someone had parked a small truck on them. But otherwise, I felt fine. Better than the day before. Emotionally, at least. I reached for my phone. 23 notifications. Most from Daniel. 3 from Rebecca. 1 from Bright Care Nursing. And 1 from Carl. I opened Carl's message first. Nurse arranged. Her name is Linda Alvarez. Former trauma nurse. Very good. Starts when you're discharged. I smiled. Carl always delivered. The message from Bright Care confirmed the same thing. Linda Alvarez, licensed RN, 20 years experience. Daily care. Medication monitoring. Physical therapy assistance. $40 an hour. I did the math automatically. Old engineer habit. 8 hours a day. About $9,600 a month. Almost the same as the money I had been sending Daniel. Funny how numbers work like that. I sniffed softly. The symmetry amused me. Around 8 in the morning the doctor came in. Mr. Whitaker, you're healing well, he said. Good. You'll likely be discharged in 3 days. Even better. Do you have home support? Yes. A nurse? Yes. He nodded approvingly. That will help a lot. After he left, I finally opened Daniel's messages. They started around midnight. Dad, please call me. We should talk. Rebecca feels terrible. At 1:47 a.m., the mortgage payment bounced. That one made me pause. Mortgage. Interesting. The next message came 20 minutes later. Dad. I leaned back against the pillow. Money really does reveal things quickly. I called him. He answered immediately. Dad. Good morning. You saw my messages? I did. He sounded exhausted. Look, I didn't realize the transfer stopping would affect things this fast. I kept my voice calm. How fast did it affect things? Our mortgage payment was scheduled yesterday. And we counted on the support. Support. That word again. How much is the mortgage, Daniel? 6,000. I whistled quietly. And I was the extreme one. Rebecca continued. We built our budget around that support. I sniffed again. That seems unwise. Daniel sighed heavily. Dad, please. Please what? Just turn it back on for now. For now. Yes, until we figure something out. Something in his tone sounded less like a request and more like panic. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds. Then I said something simple. I hired a nurse. Rebecca jumped in. That's great. Yes. See? Problem solved. Exactly. There was a small pause. Then I added, the nurse costs about 10,000 a month. Dead silence. Daniel spoke slowly. You're using the support money for that? Yes. But Dad, professional care, I said gently. Safest option. Rebecca didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, that's not the same thing. Isn't it? Another silence. Daniel tried again. Dad, we can help you. I know. Then why the nurse? Because, I said calmly, you have a spa weekend. Rebecca inhaled sharply. Martin, relax, I said. I wouldn't want to interfere with your schedule. That ended the conversation pretty quickly. Daniel said they would call back later. They didn't. Around noon, Linda Alvarez came to the hospital to introduce herself. She looked exactly like someone who had spent 20 years dealing with chaos. Early 50s, short dark hair, calm eyes, firm handshake. You're the famous Mr. Whitaker, she said. Famous. Carl told me the story. Carl talks too much. He talks just enough. She sat beside the bed and reviewed my chart. Broken leg, cracked ribs, mild lung bruise, she said. You'll be walking again soon. I like hearing that. She nodded. Then she asked a question I didn't expect. Your son helping when you get home? Probably not. She didn't react. Just wrote something down. I'll handle the daily care, she said. Cooking? Yes. Medication? Yes. Physical therapy? Yes. I smiled. You're worth every dollar. She chuckled. Families usually say the opposite. That evening, something interesting happened. Around 7:30 p.m., my phone rang again. Daniel. But his voice sounded different this time. More controlled. Dad, he said. We need to talk about the future. All right. Rebecca spoke next. We've been discussing your situation. My situation. I waited. Daniel continued. Taking care of you long-term might be complicated. Complicated. Yes. Rebecca cleared her throat. Your house has stairs. Yes. And it's quite large. Yes. She hesitated. Then she said it. We were thinking. Maybe it's time to consider assisted living. I closed my eyes. Not from anger. Just observation. Interesting how quickly things evolve. Assisted living, I repeated. There are very nice places, Rebecca said quickly. Very comfortable. And what would happen to my house? I asked. Well, Daniel hesitated. Rebecca answered instead. You could sell it. Sell it. Yes, that money could help pay for your care. I sniffed again. That quiet little sound. The structure was cracking now. And the truth was starting to show. You know, I said thoughtfully, that's an interesting idea. Rebecca sounded relieved. Really? Yes. We could help you look at places. I'm sure you could. Daniel added carefully, we just want what's best for you, Dad. Of course. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling again. Then I said something very simple. Well, that makes my next decision easier. Rebecca asked quickly, what decision? I smiled. You'll find out soon. I ended the call. Then I sent a message to Carl. Time for step 4. He replied 30 seconds later. Thought so, because the funny thing about patience is that when people think they're manipulating you, they usually reveal their entire plan. And Daniel and Rebecca had just revealed theirs. They didn't want to take care of me. They wanted my house, my assets, my life, simplified into numbers. I sniffed softly in the quiet hospital room. $360,000 in support. And apparently that still wasn't enough. But the real twist? They had no idea what was coming next. 3 days later, I left the hospital. Hospitals always feel strange when you walk out. You enter them confused and fragile. And when you leave, the world somehow feels louder. Cars, wind, sunlight, even the smell of asphalt in the parking lot. Linda helped me into the passenger seat of her car. My leg was locked in a brace, and moving felt like trying to carry a sack of bricks tied to my hip. But I was free. And more importantly, I was thinking clearly. The drive home took about 20 minutes. My house sat at the end of a quiet street lined with oak trees. 2 stories. For bedrooms. A wide front porch Ellen had loved decorating every fall. Pumpkins. Lanterns. Those little orange lights she insisted made the place feel alive. Linda parked in the driveway. "Well," she said, looking at the house. "This is nice. It's been home for 38 years. She nodded. "We'll get you back on your feet here." Inside, the house smelled exactly the same as always. Old wood, coffee, and faintly,
Ellenes lavender candles.
Linda helped me to the living room and settled me into the big recliner. "Rule number 1, she said. "What's that?"
No hero moves.
"I'm 71. Hero moves are behind me." "Good," she said. She checked my medication schedule, organized a small table beside the chair, and taped a recovery calendar to the wall. Physical therapy, medication times, follow-up appointments. Very organized. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. "Daniel." I let it ring once, then answered. "Dad, are you home?" "Yes. We're coming over." I didn't ask. I already knew why. They arrived 25 minutes later. Rebecca walked in first. She carried a grocery bag. Daniel followed behind her. They both stopped when they saw Linda sitting at the kitchen table reviewing my medication chart. Rebecca blinked. "Oh, this is Linda," I said calmly. "My nurse." Linda stood and shook their hands. "Nice to meet you." Rebecca forced a polite smile. Daniel looked slightly uncomfortable. "Dad," he said quietly, "can we talk?" "Of course." We moved to the living room. Rebecca sat on the couch. Daniel leaned against the wall. Neither of them spoke at first. Finally, Rebecca said, "We brought groceries." "That's kind of you." "Organic soup," she added. "Doctor recommended." Linda raised an eyebrow from the kitchen but didn't say anything. Daniel cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about what you said the other night." "Which part?" "The assisted living conversation." "Ah." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "We didn't mean to pressure you." "I didn't feel pressured." "That's good." Then she asked carefully, "Have you thought more about it?" I looked at them both. They were trying very hard to appear patient, calm, supportive, but I could see the tension under the surface. Money pressure does that. Mortgages, credit cards, private school tuition, spa weekends. I folded my hands together. "Yes," I said. "I've thought about it." Daniel straightened slightly. And I spoke with my lawyer yesterday." Rebecca's eyes flickered. "Your lawyer?" "Yes, Carl Henderson." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Estate planning." That word landed in the room like a small stone dropping into water. Rebecca's voice tightened slightly. "What kind of estate planning?" "Well," I said calmly, "it turns out when you get older, people start discussing where your assets go." Daniel shifted his weight. "We weren't talking about inheritance, Dad." "Of course not." Rebecca forced a small laugh. "We were just worried about your safety." "I appreciate that." I let the silence stretch again. Then I reached for the envelope sitting on the side table. Carl had dropped it off that morning. Inside were several printed documents. I handed them to Daniel. "What's this?" he asked. "Just some updated paperwork." He scanned the first page. Then the second. His face slowly changed. Rebecca leaned closer. "What is it?" Daniel swallowed. "It's a trust amendment." Rebecca looked confused. "What does that mean?" Daniel flipped another page. Then he said quietly, Dad moved most of his assets into a trust years ago. Rebecca blinked. Simple. Legal. Very effective. It means, I said calmly, that the distribution of assets depends on certain conditions. Daniel's voice sharpened. What conditions? Family conduct. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly. You're kidding.
No.
I tapped the document. If beneficiaries demonstrate neglect or attempt to manipulate financial outcomes related to my care, their inheritance portion may be reduced or redirected. The room went completely silent. Daniel looked stunned. Rebecca looked angry. That's ridiculous, she said. Is it? You're punishing us.
No.
I'm protecting my estate. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Dad, this is extreme. Maybe, but it's legal. Rebecca leaned back on the couch. So if we don't behave the way you want, we lose everything? Not everything. How much? I smiled slightly. That depends. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally Daniel asked quietly, who decides? The trustee. Who is that? Carl. Rebecca muttered something under her breath. Linda coughed gently from the kitchen. I sniffed again, because the fascinating thing about the moment was how quickly the power in the room had shifted. 3 days ago I was the injured old man in a hospital bed. Now, I was simply the man who controlled the future. Rebecca stood abruptly. This is unbelievable. Daniel didn't move. He just stared at the paperwork in his hands. Finally he asked quietly, what do you want from us, Dad? I thought about that question carefully. Then I answered honestly. Nothing. Rebecca scoffed. That's not true. It is. Daniel looked confused. Then why do this? I looked at both of them. Really looked. And for the first time, I spoke the truth plainly. Because when someone says a spa weekend matters more than their injured father, I paused. It's useful information. No one spoke after that. Eventually Daniel placed the papers back on the table. Rebecca grabbed her purse. They left 20 minutes later. No shouting. No dramatic argument. Just quiet tension. The door closed behind them. Linda walked into the living room a moment later. Well, she said, that went better than I expected. You've seen worse. Oh yes. She poured herself a glass of water. Families and money. That's the real trauma ward. I chuckled. Carefully. Ribs still hurt. But you handled it well, she said. Did I? Yes. Why? Because you didn't yell. She shrugged. You just moved the chess pieces. I sniffed again. Engineers like systems. Lawyers like leverage. And sometimes, life gives you both. Recovery is a strange process. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Mostly, it's small victories. The first week after I came home, Linda helped me walk 10 steps across the living room. 10 steps. 40 years ago, I used to hike mountain trails in Colorado with Ellen. Now 10 steps felt like crossing a desert. But progress is progress. By week 2, I could reach the front porch. By week 3, I could make coffee by myself. Linda insisted I use a cane. I insisted I didn't need one. She won that argument. Every time. Your bones are not 25 anymore, she said. Neither are yours, I replied. She grinned. Exactly. That's why I know better. Life slowly settled into a rhythm. Morning coffee. Physical therapy exercises. Short walks around the yard. Occasional visits from Carl, who liked sitting on the porch and drinking bourbon while discussing legal strategies like they were chess openings. Daniel and Rebecca didn't visit for a while. 2 weeks, actually. They called once or twice. Short conversations. Polite. Careful. Money has a way of changing the tone of family conversations, especially when it stops flowing. One afternoon around the 3rd week, Daniel finally came by alone. Linda opened the door. I heard their voices from the kitchen. Is he resting? Daniel asked. He's on the porch, she said. Daniel stepped outside slowly. I was sitting in Ellen's old rocking chair, watching the trees move in the wind.
That.
Hello, Daniel. He looked tired. Not angry, just worn out. He sat in the chair across from me. For a minute neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "We're selling the house." I nodded slowly. "The big one?" "Yes. Probably a good decision." He rubbed the back of his neck. "We bought too much house. That happens." Rebecca apparently agreed because the place was already on the market. The mortgage had been aggressive. Private school tuition for 2 kids. Car payments. Credit cards. The math had stopped working once the $10,000 disappeared. Daniel looked out at the yard. "I didn't realize how much we depended on that money." "I suspected." He sighed. "Rebecca was angry at first. I believe that. But—" he paused. "She also realized something." "What's that?" "That we shouldn't have expected it." That surprised me slightly. "Growth," I said. "Maybe." He hesitated. "Dad, about what she said at the hospital." "Yes. She regrets it." "I'm sure she does. That wasn't fair."
No.
Another silence settled over the porch. Then Daniel said something that mattered more than everything else. "We should have come to help you." I looked at him carefully. Not the successful professional with the expensive house. Just the boy who once built a crooked treehouse in the backyard. "I would have appreciated that." He nodded. "I know." The wind moved through the oak trees again. Leaves rustled softly. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "So, about the trust." I smiled. "I wondered when that would come up." Carl explained some things. "I'm sure he did." Daniel sighed. "You're serious about the behavior clause?" "Yes. But—" he hesitated. "Is there a way to earn back trust?" That question hung in the air for a moment. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about something much older. Respect. Responsibility. Family. I tapped the porch railing lightly with my fingers. "Daniel," I said slowly. "Yes. Trust isn't something you negotiate." He nodded. "I figured you'd say that. But," I added, "it is something you rebuild." He looked up. "How?" "Time. That's it. That's the only thing that works." He thought about that for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. "You always were patient. Engineers have to be." We sat there for another 20 minutes, talking about small things. The kids, his job, my physical therapy. Nothing dramatic. Just conversation. When he left, he shook Linda's hand and thanked her for helping me. She nodded approvingly after he drove away. "He's learning," she said. "Maybe. Most people only learn when life gets expensive." I sniffed softly. That familiar little sound. 6 months later, my leg was almost fully healed. The cane had been downgraded to a walking stick. Linda only visited 3 days a week now. I could manage most things on my own again. Daniel and Rebecca had moved into a smaller house across town. Half the size of the old one. More reasonable. They visited more often. Sometimes with the grandchildren. Sometimes just Daniel. Rebecca even brought soup again once. This time she didn't mention the doctor recommending it. Carl finalized the trust amendments during that time. Clear. Simple. Legal. My estate would eventually pass to Daniel and the grandchildren. But the behavior clause stayed exactly where it was. Not as punishment, as insurance. Because life teaches you something important as you get older. People reveal themselves in moments of pressure. Illness, money, fear. Those moments are like bright lights in a dark room. You suddenly see everything clearly. And when you see clearly, you adjust. That's not revenge. It's strategy. One evening about a year after the accident, I sat on the porch again watching the sunset. Linda had just left. Daniel and the kids had visited earlier. The house felt peaceful, calm. I poured a small glass of bourbon. Carl would have approved. And I thought about that moment in the hospital hallway. Rebecca's voice. Sharp. Annoyed. "We can't take care of Dad. Our weekend at the spa comes first." At the time, it sounded cruel. Now, it sounded useful. Because without that sentence, I might never have seen the truth. And truth, even when it hurts a little, is incredibly valuable. I sniffed quietly in the evening air. Funny thing about revenge. Most people think it's loud, angry, explosive, but the best kind?